All right, we're going to be starting our final unit in the first semester. It's on homeostasis and feedback systems or feedback loops. It's really kind of thinking about how your body maintains balance. So there's only one learning target, and it will really be getting more to the actual learning target later on when we do your lab, but it's to plan and conduct an investigation to provide evidence that feedback mechanisms maintain homeostasis. So we have 3 different PowerPoints. Each of them will have different objectives with them. This first PowerPoint, the main objectives are that you're able to list factors that need to maintain equilibrium in the body, identify parts of a feedback loop, and compare and contrast positive and negative feedback loops. So organisms use feedback loops to maintain internal balance. That's really what we mean by homeostasis. Okay, so homeostasis is maintaining that internal balance. And it's in response to any changes in the both internal and external conditions. Internal and external conditions. So anytime your body tries to respond to any changes, that's its attempt to try to maintain that balance or that homeostasis. What are some things that our body regulates? Your body temperature, your fluids, that your water content in your blood, the salt concentration in your blood, your pH, in other words, how acidic or basic your blood is, various nutrients. We've talked about glucose before when we talked about our different macromolecules. And also your gases, so your exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen. So those are all different types of factors that your body is regulating to try to maintain that internal balance in your body. In order to do that, your body uses what are called feedback loops, and there's 4 basic parts to a feedback loop. And sometimes if you look in different sources, they might condense this down to just 3 parts to the loop, but we've kind of broken it down into 4 parts. The first one is a sensor, also sometimes referred to as a receptor. Sensors are receptors that gather information about conditions in the body, okay? And so usually there'll be some sort of stimulus that will trigger a receptor, such as maybe a drop in temperature or a drop in your glucose levels. Receptors in your body are going to detect, and it could either be on the surface of your body or inside your body, they're going to detect that there's changes occurring. They then send that message to a control center. Now the control center is usually your brain, but sometimes it could be your spinal cord. Maybe it's going to go directly right to an organ of some sort, but usually it's the brain that's the control center. And this is control center receives the information from the sensors. And what they do is they compare the change to the normal set point. Now we're going to talk about what a set point is in just a minute. And then they respond somehow by sending a message through a communication system. So they're right in between the sensor and the communication system. So the brain receives the message from the sensor that there's some sort of change. It kind of compares it with what the normal set point is, and then it relays a message via a communication system. The communication system carries the message to all parts of the body, okay? And there's 2 major communication systems. The nervous system, that means it's going to use nerve impulses to relay that message, or the endocrine system. That means it's going to send out hormones, okay? Well, where these nerve impulses go and where these hormones go is to the target. They're going to go to a target sometimes called an effector. That's any organ, tissue, or cell that's going to change in response to the message from the communication system. So it's going to respond in some way, okay? So Usually, you know, in a loop, and we'll talk about it in a minute, a negative loop, we're trying to just reverse the change and get it back to what your normal, you know, conditions are like. But we'll talk about those two parts in a minute. But these are the 4 parts, and it always goes in this loop from sensor to control center via a communication system, and then to the target or the effector, the part that's going to change in the end. So here's a little schematic that kind of shows those 4 parts of the feedback loop. Now, information from sensors allow control center to compare current conditions to the set points. Okay, what a set point is what the ideal value is for that particular variable. And so if we were talking about our temperature, for example, the set point would be 98.6 because degrees Fahrenheit, because that's our normal body temperature, right? And so what a sensor does is it detects whether your body temperature has dropped below that 98.6 or if it's gone above that 98.6, because then that could indicate, oh, are you just getting too hot, or are you just cooling off, or do you have a fever, you know, those types of things. The pH of your blood, the set point is around 7.4, so it's right around neutral, but a little bit basic. Your blood pressure, for adults anyway, is 120/80. That's the normal set point. Your sodium level, normal blood sodium level, is about 135 to 145 milliequivalents per liter. That's the units that they use for that. So the information is continuously moving among sensors. They're picking up some sort of change. They send that to the control center that compares that change with the set point, and then if it's off, it's going to send a message via the communication system to the target, and the target will respond in some way based on that imbalance in your body. So feedback loops can either be positive or negative, but most of them in your body are going to be negative feedback loops, so kind of keep that in mind. So if we can compare both of them, negative feedbacks counteract or reverse any change in the body that moves your conditions above or below your normal set points. In other words, it's trying to return conditions to their normal set points. Negative feedback loops try to keep your internal environment stable. So that's why most of your feedback loops in your body are negative feedback loops, because they're constantly working to try to maintain that homeostasis in your body. So anytime you see that your body's responding in some way to counteract the change, that's going to be a negative feedback loop. Positive feedback loops, the control center uses information from sensors to increase the rate of change away from the normal set point. So that sounds kind of weird, huh? Why would we increase and try to get further and further away from the set point? Well, sometimes we need to have rapid change. And so by amplifying the product or the event and moving it further away from the set point, we can finally get that end result, okay? Positive feedback loops are interesting in that they have kind of almost a mini loop within them, because as that product is amplifying and amplifying and amplifying, it keeps going and going and going until the end result, as it's moving away from that normal set point, okay? So those are the 2 different types of feedback. And here's a nice little graphic organizer that kind of compares the 2, compares and contrasts the positive feedback and negative feedback loops. So let's do a little practice. How can we put these in order here? What do we always start out with first? That sensor. Okay, you can look at your different things down here, your different words. From there, the sensor is going to, again, detect whether there's a change in something, and it's going to send that message to a control center. From there, the control center is going to compare it to the normal set point and say, yeah, it's off a little bit. We better send a message here via the communication system. And that communication system is going to relay the message to a target. And that target is what's going to respond in some way. Okay? So if we look at our definitions then, a target is something like a cell, a tissue, or an organ that's going to respond in some way. A control center is what's going to receive the message from the sensor. The sensor, again, detects the stimulus and change in the set point. It's going to detect, hey, something's off here, and it's going to relay that message to the control center. And the communication system is going to relay the message from the control center to the target so that the target can respond in some way. Okay, so make sure you know the different parts of a feedback loop and the order that they follow when they go through a feedback loop. Okay, let's see if you remember the difference between the positive and negative feedback. Which one tries to return conditions to the normal set points? That's negative feedback loop. How about when rapid change is needed? Positive feedback. Counteracts or reverses changes in the body. Again, this is kind of what's happening up there. So this is a negative feedback loop. And this is what maintains stable conditions in your body. That's why most of your feedback loops are negative. Amplifies the product or event. That would definitely be positive because it's trying to kind of move you away from your normal set point. An example is when your breathing rate increases during exercise. Okay, that's actually an example of a negative feedback loop. We're actually going to talk about that more in the next one. And childbirth is a positive feedback loop. We don't get to that till the next PowerPoint, so we'll talk about that next. Increases the rate of change away from a set point. That, again, is positive feedback. And keeps moving in a cycle until an end result is achieved. That is also a positive feedback. So again, for this first part, make sure you understand the difference between positive and negative feedbacks, but also know the four main parts of any feedback loop and what their definitions are.